Hello, and welcome to the Election Assistance Commission's training on different types of election audits. Thank you for taking the time to complete this training. Let's get started. In this training, you will learn where audits can occur during the election cycle, about several types of election audits performed across the U.S., and the purpose, process, and outcome for each one. This training will help you understand several different kinds of election audits that are conducted by election jurisdictions across the United States. You'll learn about the activities and processes these audits review, and what election officials can learn by conducting them. There are many different types of audits in use across the country, so many that it's not possible to describe them all in one brief training. In this course, we'll focus on 6 types of audits that are common across the U.S. While some types of audits are required by state law, others may be optional. Each state has unique audit laws and regulations, so be sure to familiarize yourself with your state's requirements when considering how to build audits into your standard operating procedures. While we might be tempted to think of an audit as something that happens after Election Day, election officials perform a variety of audits at many points throughout the election cycle, before, during, and after an election. You're likely already conducting several election audits, perhaps without even realizing it. For example, nearly every election jurisdiction conducts some type of logic and accuracy testing before Election Day. This is a type of audit that ensures voting equipment is programmed correctly and operating as expected. Remember, an audit is a feedback loop that tells us about one specific part of an election. Each type of audit has a different purpose, and each adds to the many other checks and balances throughout the election cycle. Now we'll discuss several types of audits and what we can learn from them. We'll briefly describe their purpose, how they operate, and their potential outcomes. Early in the election cycle, audits can serve as a starting point to make sure election preparations are on the right track before voting begins. Let's look at 4 types of audits that occur before Election Day: districting audits, voter registration audits, accessibility audits, and logic and accuracy testing. Select each button to learn more. Districting audits help ensure that voters are assigned to the correct political districts in the voter registration system, so they will receive a ballot that includes the correct contests and candidates. To complete a districting audit, election officials select a sample of voters and then compare each voter's assigned district in the voter registration system against maps of political district boundaries. This audit may be performed manually, comparing maps and districts to voter information, or may be automated using Geographic Information System, or GIS, software to make the process more efficient. Districting audits can find problems caused by human error, incorrect geocoding of voter addresses, or mismatches between U.S. Census districts and political boundaries. This type of audit is particularly useful to conduct when local district boundaries have recently changed. Now it's time to check your understanding. Read the question and answer choices and select your answer. Then select Submit. Now it's time to check your understanding. Read the question and answer choices and select your answer. Then select Submit. Voter registration audits can help election officials understand where their staff might need additional training and demonstrate the quality, accuracy, and security of the voter list. There are 2 main types of voter registration audits. Select each button to learn more. Now it's time to check your understanding. Read the question and answer choices and select your answer. Then select Submit. Accessibility audits help election officials ensure that voting locations and election offices are accessible to voters with disabilities. These audits evaluate things like the number of accessible parking spaces and whether there are ramps, passenger drop-off areas, and clear walkways that meet the requirements of the Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA. Once a voting location is set up, officials can also review the accessibility of the voting area. This includes making sure it is free of obstacles and that tables and voting booths are accessible for voters. Accessibility audits help ensure that all voters can access their voting location or visit their election office, regardless of whether they have a disability. Now it's time to check your understanding. Read the question and answer choices and select your answer. Then select Submit. Nearly all states and territories conduct logic and accuracy testing prior to an election. Think of it as a dress rehearsal for voting and counting ballots. using the same voting equipment that will be used by actual voters. These tests demonstrate that voting equipment is properly programmed and operating correctly. Logic and accuracy testing occurs after ballots have been finalized and equipment has been configured, but before voting is underway. The process usually involves preparing a set of test ballots with a predetermined pattern of votes, running the test ballots through ballot scanners that will be used during the election, and checking the vote totals against the expected results. Pre-election testing can also be conducted on other systems as well, including election night reporting applications and electronic poll books. Logic and accuracy testing helps detect and remedy problems before voting equipment is deployed and demonstrates to the public that equipment is properly prepared and operating as expected. Now it's time to check your understanding. Read the question and answer choices and select your answer. Then select Submit. Most states conduct some form of post-election tabulation audit, and in many states, these audits are required by law. Tabulation audits check a sample of ballots to see if the votes cast are consistent with the reported vote totals. This process can provide evidence that ballots were counted correctly, or that the reported outcome is correct. State rules or laws generally determine who conducts the audit, when the audit occurs, the methodology used in the audit, and the scope. Processes vary across the country, but most tabulation audits involve counting votes by hand from a sample of ballots and then comparing the audited results to the original results. All post-election audits rely on detailed records and a secure chain of custody to ensure that the audit results are trustworthy. Traditional post-election tabulation audits look at a predetermined portion of ballots cast, often selected by voting location, precinct, or voting device. These audits can provide useful information about whether the sampled ballots were counted correctly. Risk-limiting audits, or RLAs, look at whether the reported winner of a contest actually won. Factors specific to the contest being audited, like the margin of votes separating the winner and the loser, are used to determine how many ballots need to be counted. The sample of ballots is also chosen in a way that ensures it is representative of all the ballots cast. Whether you are conducting a traditional post-election audit or an RLA, both can demonstrate the trustworthiness of election results without conducting a full recount. Procedural audits, sometimes referred to as compliance audits, verify that established processes and procedures were followed throughout the course of the election. These audits may review records and materials produced or used during the election, including public notices, minutes of election boards or commission meetings, logic and accuracy test materials, chain of custody documentation, reconciliation reports, and election certification reports. Procedural audits can help ensure that all election office staff and poll workers are following procedures correctly and inform election officials about whether training or documentation needs to be updated in some way. Now it's time to check your understanding. Read the question and answer choices and select your answer. Then select Submit. Congratulations! You have completed the Election Assistance Commission's training on types of election audits for election officials. You should now understand where audits can occur during the election cycle, 6 types of common election audits performed across the U.S., and the purpose, process, and outcome for each one. As always, thank you for your work in elections.